Do look up at the Great Alignment, the Great Reset, Part 2. Welcome back, everyone, and hi there if you're new. We're going to be picking up on things where we last left them in our first piece on the Great Reset. So if you haven't seen that one, please give that a watch first, and then come on back here for what I have to show you after having gone through 2022 years of looking at what's happening in the sky story during every summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. And that's the winter solstice if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, to see if I could find any of the previous summer solstice skies playing host to the same great alignment that we're going to see in the sky this year in 2022. And it turns out that all that effort was worth it because of what we found. Now, if you've been with us before, you've probably noticed that my voice sounds a little different, like I'm a bit under the weather, and that's because I am. This is the time of year for spring cleaning, something that we do every spring season around here. And this year we started with helping some friends who are moving and cleaning out their old house. And that somehow ended up with me getting bit several times on my arm by a spider, to which I realized from my reaction afterwards that I'm allergic, because those bites ended up becoming large, red, painful welts, and the rest of my body felt like I had a very bad case of the flu. So the residual stuffiness that you hear in my voice is due to that. And though I'm well on the path toward healing, my papa's still telling Dee to look out for some soon-to-be emerging superpowers for me, so I'll be sure to let you know if we see any. But in the meantime, we've got some super powerful discoveries that we've made to show you here. Now, if you've been with us before, you'll remember that we did a piece on the fourth Matrix film, Resurrections, and how that connected to its being released during the winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. Well, there was another big film that was also released during the exact same winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere time frame that was telling the story specifically about what we are calling the Great Alignment that will be taking place in June of this year, 2022. The same thing that people like our found at the World Economic Forum are calling the Great Reset. The movie, called Don't Look Up, was also talking about the exact same thing. So if you've not watched Don't Look Up yet, be warned, there are going to be some spoilers here in this piece. And although we're not fans of the entertainment industry at all, since we're well aware of the function that these tricksters really perform in the world, I have to say that Don't Look Up is one of the best movies I've actually seen in a really long time. And that in itself surprised me. And it also surprised me how much I could relate to the main characters in the movie, especially to Jennifer Lawrence's character, as she tried to tell the world the truth about what in the film is a world-ending comet heading toward Earth in 6 months. Now, I know the story with this film that we're given is that this is a metaphor for climate change that we are seeing here in the film, but it isn't. And still others speculate that it was about the past 2+ years long-running drama I call Dorona that simply evaporated recently when the narrative began shifting towards war. And that's closer to the truth, but still only part of it. What all of this really has been about, including what we see in the film Don't Look Up, is all about what we call the Great Alignment and what they are calling the Great Reset. And it just happens to be that Don't Look Up was released during the summer solstice, and in the film, the incoming comet that will end the world will be happening in 6 months. Or in other words, that would be the summer solstice. The same summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere where the Great Alignment in the sky will be happening. And that's not just some random coincidence. Don't Look Up chose a world-ending comet as a metaphor for an old world-ending calendar to a new one that will begin with the Great Alignment in June of 2022. And I can now say that I'm confident in putting this powerful information forward after having found the last time this same alignment happened and how it resulted in changing the calendar then. Or in other words, changing the old world to the new world order as is about to happen again. 1582. I had to go back to the year 1582. So it was the summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere of the year 1582 before I could find this great alignment happening again. Now remember from our first piece that what we are calling the Great Alignment is when all of the 7 visible luminaries are all found together on the east side of that special cross of the north-south meridian line in the arc of the ecliptic in the sky, as well as Uranus and Neptune that you do need a telescope to see. They're there as well. But according to the story that we're given, Uranus wasn't discovered until the year 1781, and Neptune was discovered in the year 1846. Discoveries only made possible after the invention of the telescope in the year 1608. So in the year 1582, we didn't have a telescope to see Uranus or Neptune yet, but every other luminary that was known about in 1582 that is visible without the aid of a telescope are all there together on the east side of the special cross of the north-south meridian line in the arc of the ecliptic at sunrise on the summer solstice, the same as we will see during the summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere this year in 2022. But it also turns out that even though they weren't known about yet in 1582, Uranus and Neptune were still there too. So what's the connection to the year 1582 here? Well, for those of you who are familiar with the work presented in our private videos, you may remember that 1582 is the year that the world switched to the current calendar most of us use today as we go about our daily lives here on the ground. 1582 is the year we switched to what is known as the Gregorian calendar. It is called the Gregorian calendar after Pope Gregory VIII, who was pope at the time, and Pope Gregory issued a papal bull, Inter Gravissimus, in 1582, changing the calendar from the Julian calendar to this now-to-be-used Gregorian calendar. This Gregorian calendar is also where the designation of AD on our timeline comes in. AD is short for Anno Domini. Anno Domini in Latin means Year of Our Lord, the Lord being Jesus Christ of Christianity. So the Gregorian calendar was then the timeline that was tied to the life of Jesus Christ. This is so hugely important to comprehend that the one who sets the calendar literally rules the world. Yet this is something that Dee and I have discovered most people have never even once thought about or would even care about. But it's this simple act of setting the calendar, the timeline, that almost everyone all over the quote-unquote world uses in what is known as a civil or a corporate way, or a way of doing commerce or business. This timeline is what is tied to an object of very specific religious belief, the Christian believer's life of Jesus Christ timeline, as commanded by the Roman Catholic Pope in 1582. Now, the control of the timeline is a huge key that keeps this enormous deception turning and over the heads of most people's comprehension or care. Where a question like, why would a civil calendar that is used all over the world, no matter whether you're a subscriber to a particular religion or not, be tied to the supposed life of one particular religious figure? In other words, tied to one particular story, that being the greatest story ever told, his story. AD, Anno Domini, Year of Our Lord, the story of Jesus Christ of Christianity. That's his story, his timeline. And the Roman Catholic Pope in 1582 set the world's timeline to that story. So whether any of you believes the story or not, you are walking on his world. You're on his timeline, in his story. But being that the Pope believes, or at least gets many others to believe, that he is the vicar of Christ, meaning the stand-in for Christ here on earth, it's now his story, the Pope's history or calendar or timeline that you're tied to. The movement of the real heavens that cycle above all of our heads is how the calendar or the real clock in the sky is set. And it's not done by the workings of any being here on the ground that can take credit for it. The only work they can take credit for are the stories or the history they make up about it, for all of us to live unknowingly under. But what you're looking at is the real reason that the Gregorian calendar had to be reformed from the Julian calendar. It's because the world's best astronomers and astrologers, the imperial priest class type people, figured out that they were about to witness the very rare alignment in the sky that we will all have the opportunity to witness again this June of 2022, where every visible luminary will all be together on the east side of that special cross of the north-south meridian line and the arc of the ecliptic at sunrise on the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. An opportunity for the world's best astronomers and astrologers to be able to sync up all of their observations of the heaven cycles. In other words, a great reset of the calendar for the whole world would be happening in 1582, and we have been on the same timeline ever since. But of course, I kept looking back, and I had to look at every summer solstice in the northern hemisphere all the way back to the year 350 before I could find any similar looking great alignment, as you can see from this image, of the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere at sunrise sky in the year 350. We've got all 7 visible luminaries again, all lined up on the east side of the special cross of the north-south meridian line in the arc of the ecliptic. And again, just a reminder, we're looking at just the 7 visible luminaries, because the year 350 is long before the telescope was invented or the discoveries of Uranus and Neptune were made. But if we look, we do find that Uranus was there too, but Neptune was not. Neptune at this time was to the west side of that special cross of the north-south meridian line in the arc of the ecliptic, in the middle of the real oracle, or the real all-seeing eye in the sky as we've nicknamed it. But remember that neither Neptune or Uranus had been discovered yet, so their cycles were not yet being tracked in 350 AD. So was anything going on in history significant to our discussion of this great alignment and the situating of world timelines? Well, I think it's pretty significant that 25 years before this great alignment in 350 AD, we had Constantine, the great Roman Empire at the time, bringing together what is known today as the Nicene Council. A group of what I can now say confidently were a group of the world's best astronomers and astrologers to sync their calendars to one and the same story. The Nicene Council determined which books of the Bible would be considered official doctrine of a unified state church, Christianity, that was officially made the state religion by the Roman Emperor Theodosius in the year 380. That's just 30 years after the Great Alignment in 350 AD. 30 years is the approximate length of the longest cycle of the visible luminaries, Saturn. And that's no coincidence either. So I kept looking back over summer solstice sunrises in the northern hemisphere sky, and I couldn't find anything similar to the Great Alignment again until I got back to the year 113. But as you can see from this image, it's Mercury that isn't going to make it above the horizon to be visible with the rest of the visible luminaries like a real Great Alignment does. I looked back until the timeline flips from the AD designation to the BC era. But the publicly available programs like I used here, Stellarium, does not let you go back before the AD timeline. But I still didn't find any other great alignment that happened again. This great alignment that is happening again, this summer solstice of 2022 in the Northern Hemisphere, is what is being used to usher in a new story, a new contract, a new world, or what is being called a great reset. And it's not just because these luminaries form this great alignment in the sky, but also because of where this is situated. It's in the east, where things begin anew. In the east, where everything rises in the real all-seeing eye in the sky. And where all of the visible luminaries are found bathing what has become a very famous celestial baby in light. Not just the light of the sun, but also of the moon and all the rest of the brightest of the luminaries in the sky too. They are all surrounding the combination of the star constellations of Cetus and Pisces. The heavenly baby being Cetus and his angelic wings being Pisces, or who we now famously know as the baby Jesus. The timeline that ties us to this, or his story, is instead of the knowledge of our real creator's natural heavens, clock, calendar, timeline, and story. Making these discoveries and being able to share them to try to teach others about them has been for Dee and I such an amazing blessing. But we are realizing more and more as we go forward that all of what we are seeing in the world is not just due to a lack of information or knowledge like we are sharing here, but it's really about just a simple lack of care. This is something that Dee and I definitely related to as it was portrayed in the story in the film Don't Look Up. And we have the extra added benefit here of not even having to tell people that a world-ending comet is coming to kill us all, because it isn't. But even trying to tell people everything that is so important to know that we did discover about the sky has still largely fallen on the same deaf ears. We learn the exact same things the characters in that movie did. People will choose almost anything else so that they don't look up. We are past the point of thinking large numbers of people will care about any of the discoveries that we've made. We've learned over the past several years now that we vastly overestimated people in general and their care about what is true or what is real. And I really wish to be wrong about this, but so far, we've not been. Our focus now is only on getting these discoveries out into this reality as a way to fulfill our purpose and the reason that we were shown these extraordinarily magnificent things by the Creator in the first place. For the very rare few of you who do see any of our work here and do care to learn much more, we do have many videos available for you privately, and you can start that conversation with us about accessing them through our website, starsnearme.com, and a link will be found down in the description. We also have books for beginners to start learning the basics about how everything in the sky cycles above all of our heads, and much more to come that you can also check out at our website, starsnearme.com. That's going to be it for this one for now, so until next time, stay lit and be well.